For many years, I've been interested in a number of areas of scholarship which came together in this book. One area has been this whole Aryan issue. I've been studying from a very open perspective on the history of the Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization, Vedic history, and so on. And in fact, our foundation has sponsored a lot of archaeological work. And we're doing 20 volumes on the history of Indian science and technology. So the ideas are not based on some propaganda or some politics, but actual hard science. That's an area of interest I have, and the bottom line is that there is really no proof of an Aryan-Dravidian divide as such. And in fact, we have a long chapter in this book that explains how this concept was started in the 1800s. A new concept was started to create a divide, to show that one group doesn't get along with the other, they have different culture, different religion, not just different language. Language, of course, there are many in India, but that is not the basis for being a whole separate history or race or something of that sort. Now, as this work was going on, about 10 years ago, something very unusual happened. I met an academic scholar who, just casually, somebody else was having a lunch gathering and introduced me to some people. And there was one scholar who said that he's just come from India, and he, in describing his trip, said that he had gone as part of the Afro-Dalit project. I never heard of this project. Most of you probably never did. So I started inquiring, what is this Afro-Dalit project? And he said, Afro-Dalit project is this project we're running in India where we are showing that the Dalits are actually the blacks of India and the non-Dalits are the whites of India, and the history of white-black race relations in the US can be a way to educate the people in India about their own slavery. So I said, this is very unusual. I've never heard of this kind of interpretation. So I went to his office, and he had a map of India broken into various stans, and there is one Dalit stan and David stan, and that's the cover of this book. So the cover map of this book, which shows breaking up of India, is not something we dreamt up. It's not an artist. It is actual physical thing. There's a website called dalitstan.org that also talks about this. So this got me interested to find out who's behind it. And this guy was very transparent, and he told me that there are these organizations, and there are these and we have camps, and we do youth empowerment, we teach them their history, we teach them their identity. So it was like under the garb of human rights and education, a huge campaign to create a very divisive identity, an identity of victimhood. And starting from organizations based right here in the US. So I started following the trail. I started looking at, who sponsors this, who funds it, who are the main trustees of some of these organizations involved, what are their links, where was their career earlier. And so, if you keep searching and doing enough research into various organizations and the people behind them, you can discover more and more. So this is how, and money trail is not very hard to find in the US, because the non-profit organizations have to file a form 990PF, my foundation forms. I'm sure your temple organizations file. So it is a public record. Any non-profit organization, where it gets money from, where it gives money, this sort of thing is annual filing with the IRS, and the public can find out. So I started calling some of these organizations and getting their data, which they were happy to share in most cases. And I would even ask questions like, I'm very interested as a scholar, I'm interested in your India programs, and they would be very happy that somebody is interested, and they would send me a box full of literature on, we are doing all this in India, And so as if, it was a matter of pride for them. It was not like something they're scared of or hiding. So most of the data is actually quite easy to get, but it's a huge amount of work to put it together. It's just a lot of effort. There is no espionage needed to get this data. It's just that somebody has to want to get it and work very, very hard running around to capture all this data. And you can visit some of these organizations, and I've listed, this book has listed 100 or so individuals and institutional organizations in the US and in the West and in Europe that are involved in this project. And so some I've visited, some I've corresponded with, some I've gone to their websites, some I've looked at their government filings and their disclosures. And so this book is not talking about an abstract idea, but very concrete cases, very concrete examples, very concrete data. So after doing this, looking at the people behind this kind of movement, I realized that something similar, one of the persons I started talking to told me that something similar had caused the civil war in Rwanda. So I started studying Rwanda with the help of various Western scholars. And the Hutu and Tutsi correspond to our Aryan Dravidian kind of idea, which was also brought there by Western missionaries and Western scholars. And the local people, while they had a sense of local identity and language, they did not think of themselves as belonging to another race, and they did not think of themselves as enemies of each other. This was created in the 1800s. So the same kind of a parallel, you can see how dangerous it can get. Now what I found is, I started making a list of who are the parties involved. And I started with one shelf, and then one shelf was not enough. Then I had a whole bookcase full of material, filing cabinet full of material. Soon the amount of information, just the physical information, was so huge that I needed an assistant. I got some research assistants to help me organize it, to make a computer database with all this data, so that we could at least get our arms around it to figure out why are people doing this, who are these people doing it, what is their goal, why are they creating all these divisive identities within different parts of India. And when we see something in the newspaper, they don't give you an analysis of who are behind it. It just looks like some random event happened, there was some fight here, some ethnic violence here, but they don't give you the full details of who has worked, who has funded, who has trained these people, what's behind it. So I wanted to go behind this also. And I found that, for instance, in Denver there is a Joshua Project. The Joshua Project is a very right-wing Christian organization, a consortium of many different churches that is very interested in, they've targeted India. They call it the 1040 window, which means the latitude 10 degrees, latitude 40 degrees between them is their target, and the other countries in that space are China, where it's not allowed, and the Middle East also, where they won't allow these things. So India is their biggest target, where they want to go and convert a lot of people, and the strategy is to teach them that if they convert, they get freedom, and that means that without converting, they are in bondage. And so the whole history of how the Indian civilization has kept them in bondage, and the imported ideas of religion will free them, is the basic message. So it is not conversion based on some spiritual idea or philosophical idea of God or anything like that, but a political kind of a purpose and a political approach to it. Then I found another interesting organization called Dalit Freedom Network. Now you would think that Dalit Freedom Network must be a group run by Dalits, but not one of the founders and top trustees was an Indian or a Dalit. They were all white Christian guys. And so I started researching who are these people. How come they're interested in Dalits all of a sudden? And so I found that their own record at home, some of them were related to US congressmen, senators, various church groups. I found that their own record here of their policies was hardly humanitarian. I mean, some of them had borderline racist kind of ideologies. Some of them had various very kind of egalitarian policies at home. And yet they were very gung-ho about liberating some other people at the other end of the world. And using a few, 3 or 4 important Dalits they've built up as their poster boys, as their sort of spokespersons. But these people are not the ones who really are calling the shots. So I've done an analysis of Dalit Freedom Network, how it works. And they have offshoots in Europe. They have branches in India. And so now the Indian press, when they quote Dalit Freedom Network said this, they think it's the Dalit voice. But you go to a Dalit village, ask an average guy, he never heard of these people. It's basically middlemen who put themselves in this position of authority and power. And they have also somehow convinced the media that they know what they're talking about, and then they speak for the Dalits. But the average Dalit will say that they don't. Then I found out that there's a huge international mobilization against India as a nation state for racism, allegation of racism. This has been going to the UN. It has gone to the European Union, European Parliament. They are trying to propose a bill in Washington. So this group who are behind it is a consortium of the Dalit Freedom Network are into it, and Lutheran Church of Europe, particularly. I'd never thought Lutheran Church is an important organization in this, but I found that they are at the very center, not the US for some reason, I don't know why, but the Lutheran Church in Northern Europe and Germany are very much, and they're full of, how this, they have come up with the whole history of India. They're looking at it their own way as a history of Aryan and Hindu oppression of masses. And their goal is to go liberate these people. This is sort of the bottom line of what they're trying to do.